Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Simply Trade News Roundup. I'm your host, Anik, if you have not listened. And, there's lots happening in the news right now. Not really trade related. We're waiting on a lot of updates. This one, I know we have a Canada segment, but, we haven't talked about CARM. And last time I got to talk about CARM with someone really special who I will mention right now. So that is what we'll get into. We're giving you an update, and she actually did just get off an important call. So I know she has some crucial information for you. Let me introduce you to my special guest, which I'm so happy to have on all the time. I do have to make a little bit of a disclaimer that it is not the former Canadian Prime Minister, but her name indeed is Kim Campbell. I'm sure you guys have heard of her. Welcome to the studio, we're virtual, but welcome to the podcast. How are you, Kim?
I'm amazing and so great to be back with you, especially talking about one of my favorite topics, CARM. And yes, I'm glad you made the distinction because I've had many great stories throughout my career about being mistaken for the former Prime Minister one. And again, if you do know her, she's also blonde, so it happens. But yes, I have lots of fun stories about that. I call myself the Kim Campbell Customs one, not the former Prime Minister.
I love that. And you know what? Maybe you could run at this point. Maybe your name is already a marketing tool to run as maybe you should. Here you go.
Sometimes
your name is already popular.
Yeah, sometimes it's just name recognition. But very happy that our new Prime Minister, Mr. Carney, is in place and working very hard on our behalf. So.
Yeah. So let's so last time we talked, CARM was months ago, actually. I think it was like the day after it, or a week after it got established or like put into place, and people were freaking out. The system wasn't working. People didn't know how to use the tool correctly. How is that looking now in that sense? Well, I mean, we'll still get into all the challenges and stuff, but how is that looking right now?
Great way to start because it is a bit of a positive story there in terms of a lot of that has really settled down. So I guess we could say generally entries or accounting documents are being submitted kind of like the US 7501s fairly easily now and predictably. First couple months were exactly what we thought, horrible. But that part has stabilized, and I guess we're also learning a little bit more about some of the really significant changes, which has helped. So from a systems standpoint, it's fairly okay. We definitely still have some outage issues that impact other things, and I know they're working hard to try and stabilize them, but really kind of because of the implementation strategy they undertook. So I would say for the most part, that part's stable. What still is a challenge is figuring out all the new things. The reporting capabilities are really confusing. How people pay, all that really significantly changed because the customs, the service providers, the customs brokers, their roles changed and our ability to support people changed significantly. So that's still not great. I'm trying to figure that out.
How are you trying to figure that out? Because I mean, like, if you figure it out, how are they implementing this, and how are they getting trained, or how are they changing, the system, or what's going on?
Well, all those are great questions. So the training has always been a problem because one of the challenges with CARM is we really didn't have access to it until it went live. And it's kind of twofold. It's like the electronic communication, kind of like the ABI interfaces that we know in the US where the customs brokers send in entries. That completely changed. But then there was the layering on of what is called the CARM client portal, kind of like the ACE portal. But the big difference in Canada was it's kind of a mandatory thing. You absolutely have to be in the portal. It's really a condition of entry now. And so that is completely problematic still. The registration is very difficult. It's very easy not to be able to register. So that's really part of the backdrop of the story. For those that could get on and register easily, probably wasn't that big of a lift. But for the ones that couldn't, and which is the majority, they still need support through customs because the broker just can't see certain things. We can't get to certain things. And customs position right now is the importer has to deal with certain things. And that's one of the certain things. The help desk that they've implemented, we still know is completely backlogged. So it could take days, weeks, months in some cases to get support out of the help desk, which is completely obviously unacceptable, but that's the reality still. And so that's the big part. I think for a lot of importers that are on and using it, just trying to figure out the handshakes of payment, what their roles are within there, their ability to get information they need to make sure that they're paying properly, but also the accounting piece, because a fundamental change that happened with CARM is Customs now makes the calculations and tells you how much you owe. And that data resides in the Customs client, the CARM client portal, and it's not easy to extract. So that's kind of for those that have been on it, that's still the big piece for them. They're having troubles figuring that out.
And then is there a question like, is it accurate or is the right information there? Is that a problem? Or do you think?
Still a problem. So some of it, it's a massive problem. I think some of the accuracy issues we might have worked through because part of the CARM transition was they changed a lot of things that weren't really known to us until we started going live and slogging through and figuring out what they had changed and what they hadn't changed. So one could probably argue that the accuracy seems to be okay. It was the application of the data and how they then made their calculations was a big lift and was some problems. But having said that, if you need to make corrections, if you need to make adjustments, like what in the US you call post-summary corrections, or if you need to appeal, these pieces of the portal are still not clear and maybe working effectively as we had hoped. And so some of those pieces are still really problematic. And that's a big deal right now, especially when maybe we were charged incorrectly because we didn't know initially. But also, even with surtax now, like there surtax and retaliatory tariffs on the US side, like you get like what's going on there, and you might have maybe had paid more money than you should have because the tariff classification suddenly became really important because now tariffs apply. So now if you made a mistake or you're trying to get money back, the refund process is not easy. It's not easy at all.
Wow. Okay. So that's a whole nother layer. Like the whole issue isn't within Canada anyways, but then we add the US layer of tariffs. And yeah, how does the program even react to those changes? Because I know sometimes the changes can be made pretty abruptly, right? It's from one day to the next. Obviously the system will not be
right. So here's probably a good part of CARM. So what was fundamentally different again is now the system is making the calculations. So when the surtax retaliatory efforts came into on the Canadian side, a lot of that's built into the CARM portal. So it's actually making the calculations. So yeah, so it's a little bit different than the USA. But again, on the USA, there was much more complexity. There's a lot of EOs that are stacked on one HS classification. We don't really have that same lift here right now.
So what can people expect? So if they're using CARM or businesses using CARM, what can they expect as in, if they do have issues or if they need to appeal or if they're not getting the right calculations or whatever, what can they do? Or do they just have to wait it out? Is it like a patience game? And then what if they're paying the wrong amounts like that? You could get in trouble later and pay millions of dollars, but it really is the whole system.
Yeah, I would say twofold. One is obviously connect with your customs broker. We know that most importers are still using customs brokers for obvious reasons. They are the trade professionals. They do have the efficiencies of knowing how to deal with the border. So that would be the first thing, is to work with your customs broker and just establish about why is that happening. Importers, again, could do a lot of some of that refund work or appeal work within the portal themselves. But again, if you want it to be done efficiently and properly, I would still suggest you deal with a customs broker or a trade compliance person, just because if you don't put it in right, you're going to get it rejected anyways, or you're going to have your claim rejected, which we're hearing about. People are just going into the portal because you can do these things, but if you're not used to them and you don't know the lingo and the terminology, importers are just requesting appeals without, the proper submission, because there is always a framework around that, and a lot of things are getting rejected. So that would be a suggestion as well. The other big thing is there is still the help desk at customs. So if there is still a problem, you can lodge a ticket. You probably won't hear back for many weeks, but that is definitely also an avenue to get clarification.
Yeah. So, and then, okay, let's talk about the Canada and U.S. Relationship right now. I know you get on a lot of calls and what with the U.S. Embassy. How are they coming into play, and what are you hearing? In terms of like U.S. and Canada relationships and border and what's going on there? Is there any updates?
Well, I feel like from a Canadian perspective, we are very hopeful and we're seeing positive signs that there is some good things being discussed between obviously President Trump and our Prime Minister Carney. We were very happy to see President Trump come to the G7 this week. And that was a very positive sign. And I know that there seemed to be a really good meeting between our two heads of state plus a lot of the key folks. So we look forward to hopefully having an agreement. I think they've put down the target date for something by July 21st. So that's very positive. And obviously, we hope to continue that conversation, see that come to fruition. That would be a benefit to both of our countries. I think from the perspective of the folks that might be within USTR and other things, I'm very thankful for their ear. They certainly want to learn about what is happening at the border, especially around the CARM file. And that's probably maybe what you've heard from your listeners, because I know there's been some questions or I guess comments recently about people going, oh my God, CARM's still a disaster, CARM something, And really what happened on May 20th was a very significant date. And that's definitely what I'm appreciating the opportunity to talk to not only just our U.S. Colleagues that support trade, but on the Canadian side as well, to understand exactly what that meant and the implications of that, which is the final implementation of the what's called release prior to payment, RPP, which the U.S. really kind of refers to as surety bond. So this was a drop dead date. Again, the perspective from CBSA, like I kind of appreciate it, but it wasn't ever correct that we were going to put every single importer on a bond within like a 6-month period. And we've had, like, I could go on forever. We probably could have 5 shows on that for 2 hours each about the historical footprint of that. But at the end of the day, the grace period stopped on May 20th, which meant any single shipment that did not have that in place did not move past the border.
So there was probably a lot of shipments that did not.
Yes. So 2 things have happened. Some didn't make it to the border. And, I don't even think we really know exactly. And some of us in industry are actually trying to quantify that right now for folks. So in other words, you look at our large courier industry, like they didn't even move packages up because they wanted to make sure things were in place. So they're stacked up in the U.S. because they haven't even got out of the U.S. Then we have a couple other things. Trucks maybe tried to cross the border, and because one of the shipments didn't meet the requirement, like they just turned around and went back because they're not going to sit there. So like that's kind of an unquantifiable amount. What is quantifiable, though, we do know for some many shipments, and especially couriers have been great to lean in and share their experiences. It has moved back across the border into in-bond warehouse facilities. Now those in-bond warehouse facilities are pretty much max capacity. There's no more room for shipments because they can't get the RPP to then affect the release. So that's really what kind of we're pushing on right now is like what's happening right now is not sustainable because the warehouses are full. Shipments are now being sent back to the United States, so they couldn't clear, and or they're now going to be turned over to the government of Canada, which we call the Crown. And the importer obviously will not have the benefit of the goods. Most of these are affecting small, medium enterprises, which is horrible to think that not only are they going to lose their sale and their revenue, like all those ramifications. And so this is what I've been working on with many industry colleagues the last couple of weeks, just to try and push forward. Like we are in a big crisis here and we need to change some things.
This was a month ago. So how has it evolved in a month? Like, because if I'm thinking that these shipments maybe are still not across the border or...
Yeah, no, it becomes cumulative, right? Because you just keep like first day you might get 100, then it's another 1,000. Then
oh my God.
Yeah. So this is where, because we're now moving up to, I'm losing, this topic's so fun. I'm losing track of the days. Okay. A month. We're a month into it. And so it just becomes a cumulative effort. So that's why for a lot of these warehouses, they can't accept any more shipments. They're full. So they're either going to have to start sending stuff back or not accepting shipments coming up. Like there's a whole bunch of really difficult things going on behind the scenes within these companies to try and figure out how to manage this issue.
So what is the solution you're proposing? Like, how do you solve this problem? Because it seems like, I mean, first of all, these businesses are stuck, but what are they supposed to do? What are they supposed to do now if they're stuck and they have stuff in their warehouse and they can't get it across the border? What are they supposed to do? And what are people supposed to do that want to go through the process? Like that haven't even, they're not set up, but how do they get there? Or do they even bother? What?
That's why at this point, a lot of them are not going to bother. Or they're going to try and figure it out. They'll have to. But again, this is where it becomes like, if it's so difficult to ship to Canada, then eventually you're just going to stop, right?
Not going to ship.
Yeah. So, but even now, to answer your question, like depending on where they were in the get ready state for CARM, they might have to register on the portal first. They might have to get their release prior to payment bond. This is all new things for people. They don't even know what those words mean. They have to deal with a whole industry sector called the surety. I know they're working super hard, but let's just face it. There is tens of thousands of, almost hundreds of thousands of new importers that never had surety bonds. They only have their own capacity and they have their own capacity restraints.
Why was this put into place anyways?
The philosophy, the U.S. has it as well. The same concept applies on the U.S. side. Really, it's as simple as to say, if you want your goods released at the border, you have to put down this surety or some kind of collateral to say you will pay. Otherwise, you have to stop and pay at the border. So this is the other piece of the story. Canada Customs has always been very, I want to say flippant. I'm thinking of a better word. Let's just say flippant. That you have to do what's called a C-type. Well, a C-type is silly. C-type were put in 40 years ago, and it's all manual. So if you don't have this in place and you want your goods to clear, you have to create a manual piece of paper, like through the CARM client portal, create basically a 7501. We call it a CAD now. Then you have to get in your car or have somebody go in their car to the port of entry. The way it works in Canada, like in the US, most people do not live at the border. They just don't. So they potentially, or if they're in, the thing came into Toronto because of the way supply chain works, like there's different hubs and networks. There's no way they're going to get on a plane and fly from Vancouver to Ontario to get their goods cleared. Like that's basically what is being suggested here. And then they would have to go do the release process and the accounting and make the payment all at the border before the goods can be released. This is considered the contingency plan, which is just not tenable. That's why people are going to abandon packages, because there's no way they're going to do it.
So what's the future looking like? Like, I mean, I know you're talking to a lot of people, you're seeing what the solutions are, but what is the solution proposed?
Yeah. So what ended up happening, a smaller coalition has continued the work around the CARM file, and we have been working with our elected officials, including there is a parliamentary committee that has been very, very helpful around even CARM implementation. And they actually took up the topic again this week. So there is a motion down, which was across party lines, to take a look at RPP and try and solve the problem. So we very much appreciate their support and efforts there. The only problem is they're now going to be on summer vacation, so that won't be addressed until September again. But it usually does help the discussion in terms of we have something to work on, hopefully over the summer. So we're prepared when parliamentary committee resumes, and we have a good story to tell. So in that letter, we kind of had some recommendations, but I think the one we're pushing for immediately now is because it's becoming so problematic. And as we just talked about, like each day there's a bunch more coming. It's not. I was going to say, yeah. So what would be the smartest thing for us to do right now is to extend the grace period. So CARM go in October. We had a grace period from October to May 20th. That would be the smart thing. Let's just extend the grace period. There is a bit of a piece that would have to, like a formal thing that would have to happen. But quite honestly, I find Customs is able to get formal things happening when they would like it to happen pretty quickly. So I'm hopeful that they could solve it that way fairly quickly as well, with support from elected parliamentarians. So that would be obviously the best first thing to do. Then there's a bunch of other things underneath that. Like, let's go back to some of the older measures. Is there a way to responsibly help smaller businesses? Specifically, could customs brokers clear them like they have been all along? Could there be some exceptions for smaller importers that only clear 1 or 2 times a year? We understand that kind of option is in the United States. Just some things like that. Common sense things like, can we just pay via credit card? Why do we have to get this bond and then, go to the border? Couldn't we just pay online with a credit card? Because actually, that's one good thing about CARM. You can actually do payments by credit card now. But it's just the way they chunked it up that they don't allow that to happen in the way that would be logical. So those are kind of some of the high level things that we're really pushing for and feel would be very useful.
Yeah. And this is just a very small, I don't even know if this is a valid question towards this. And we can take it out, Mara, if this doesn't make sense. So if you're like, let's just say I sell clothes, I make clothes and I sell them, right? And I'm not really shipping, like I don't have big shipments. I'm just selling them to people in America. Like I make them handmade and I sell them. It's probably like what, 200 a year. Is that like affected in that sense? No, right?
Well, not if it's moving domestically within the U.S., but if you're going to ship them to Canada, yes, they would have whoever is going to buy them or whoever is the importer of record. You could be, if you were the company that was shipping the clothes, you could be a non-resident importer, but you would have to then do all the things we just discussed. Or the flip side of that is if your customer, and it really depends. There's a difference between what we call casual here, which is very confusing. And this is the scenario as Kim, I'm here at home. I'm buying these clothes online as just me, myself. There is provisions that it could be handled through a courier organization, but it again, it's only through couriers certain ways. Like there's ramifications around that. And complications, but there is some easier ways to do it that way. But if it's not that way and you don't meet the parameters, then yes, you would have to do all those things. Like if you're a small company that maybe is buying those clothes because you want to put it in your small shop, you would have to do all the things we just discussed.
That sounds problematic, especially, I mean, how hard it is, it should be easy to do that. Like especially with the US and Canada, I mean, like, right next to each other. Like how come we can't make business, we can't make money, and I think that's crazy. But I mean, at least you guys are figuring it out, and I hope you can figure it out as soon as possible. But I feel like this gives clarity. I mean, all of this through CARM and whatever is going on right now might help people right now listening to this and hearing you talk on, that there is discussions and hopefully there will be a new grace period. I feel like that would be the smartest thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes
sense. It makes sense. If something's not working and you see everyone failing, I mean, what can you do? It's your country that's gonna honestly suffer at the end, I think. But I think we touched on everything that I kind of wanted to go over. I mean, we're still waiting on what's happening with the tariffs, right? And that's a whole different layer we have there. We didn't really talk about that, but it's because there's nothing to really talk about because the tariffs that have been in place for a while.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good point. Maybe we should just raise, there was an announcement yesterday from our prime minister that maybe on July 21st, things will be added from a Canadian perspective. Yeah. So that was kind of the deadline on the July 21st. That was kind of the deadline that they've also, President Trump and PM Carney are aiming to have an agreement in place. But he did kind of lay out a bit of a framework that if those talks don't materialize the way we can figure out it together, that we'd be moving to do some retaliation around the steel and aluminum piece. And in addition to that, we're also looking to try and stop some of the diversion of steel and aluminum that have been coming in because of the tariffs in the United States.
Yeah, that sounds like a little like the European response, I feel like, because they've been holding off, and they're kind of like, oh, we're not going to take those 10%. Because I mean, it's good for for countries to speak up. And I did talk to someone from Europe recently, and it's funny because they're like, "Oh, the Canadian and European relationship is pretty good. You know, we have a, you know, it's working." And I'm like, that's so weird. Like, how is Europe okay with Canada, but like the United States is right next to Canada, which is so easy. I mean, you could make so much money on both sides, and it's so hard.
And hopefully, we will work out the issues that have been identified. And I know that we're certainly willing and wanting to do that. Yeah, as long, for our own benefit, not obviously at the detriment of Canada. So that, and I'm encouraged. The last few things I've seen, it seems like Prime Minister Carney and team are on the right path. So hopefully we will get there.
I am hopeful. How is it? Let me ask you: are you guys still avoiding like American products or?
Yeah. So I was just going to add, and I can tell you, Canadians are still resolved to support the cause. So if you look at the tourism numbers, we are not traveling to the United States writ large. Certainly the same strategy or thinking. I shouldn't say strategy, but thinking about product buying is continues. We on the shelves right now, we definitely have strong labeling about what's made in Canada. We also have strong labeling about what has a tariff, and much to my
really,
yeah,
wow.
Yeah. And I also can say, much to my sadness, I still cannot get access to California red wine.
Why don't you just get European red wine? It's better anyways.
Well, I can tell you right now, Canadians, and that's what's the sad part for me, is the longer this goes, the more people are moving to other options. So to your point, we don't have American alcohol not only available in our stores, but in our restaurants. So we're all finding out, you are right, there's a lot of good wine in different regions of the world.
Yeah.
Which is a sad part, because even if we figure it out and it comes back, like people have already diversified, right? So
we're hoping that Canada and America will unite in the sense of, trade will become easier and things move smoothly across the borders. I think that's best for everyone. And honestly, I'm so grateful for all the input you gave me, because I know our listeners will truly appreciate that. And once CARM is all set, and you can maybe give us a tutorial here on the podcast.
I would love to. That'd be great. If people have like something they want to have that, please let Anik know, and we can certainly do that. And I can bring some of my industry colleagues into that.
I think that would be a great way. I mean, once everything is fully we're good to go, everything is solid. We'll get there. So maybe in a few months, hopefully. So it's Friday. So it's Friday for us, but you're probably hearing this on Monday. But I hope you have a great weekend, Kim, and I hope everyone here listening has a great week. It's going to be a rainy week for us, which is kind of exciting because it's been like 105. So.
Now, we complain we're going to be like 90 this weekend. Now, we're not complaining about that, but that's hot for us.
That is hot. Yeah, it is hot. So anyways, I hope you guys have a beautiful week or weekend, both. And we will see you next week back. And I think I will be talking to a broker. So we'll see about that. Anyways, have a great week. And yeah, thank you, Kim, so much for coming on.
So great to see you again.
Thank you very much for joining us. Simply Trade is brought to you by the generous contributions of Global Training Center. You can follow the show and GTC on LinkedIn or Twitter and other social networks. Make sure you check out the show notes in the description for a full rundown of today's show with all the important links. Also, make sure that you share this with a friend and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform. We really like hearing from you. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to rate and review wherever you listen to this podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a guest in the show or would like to sponsor Simply Trade or suggest any topic you would like for us to discuss, please contact us via email at simplytrade@globaltrainingcenter.com, or you can DM us on Twitter at simplytradepod. Thank you again for the privilege of your time. Happy trading. Simply Trade is not a law firm or an advisor. The topics and discussions conducted by Simply Trade hosts and guests should not be considered and is not intended to substitute legal advice. you should seek appropriate counsel for your own situations. These conversations and information are directed towards listeners in the United States for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only and should not be substituted for legal advice. No listener or viewer of this podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking legal advice from counsel. Information on this podcast may not be up to date depending on the time of publishing and the time of viewership. The content of this posting is provided as is. No representations are made that the content is error-free. The views expressed in or through this podcast are those of the individual speakers, not those of their respective employers or Global Training Center as a whole. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of this podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed.